Sunday night in Cleveland wasn't just another loss for the Browns. It wasn't just another disappointing performance by a struggling quarterback. What happened inside Heinz Field's visiting locker room after the Steelers' game went far beyond the ordinary. It was a full-blown organizational earthquake. Sources from inside the team describe a scene that could only be called nuclear, a confrontation that didn't just shake the starting quarterback's confidence, but sent a ripple through the entire roster, the coaching staff, and even the fan base. And at the center of it all, fifth-round sensation Shedeur Sanders, the rookie quarterback who had been waiting, watching, and quietly observing his teammates' ongoing collapse. By the time the final whistle blew, Dillon Gabriel, the third-round starter, had just completed another catastrophic performance. 3 turnovers, miscommunications across the line, confused pre-snap reads. Cleveland's offense looked like it had been dismantled piece by piece. But while Gabriel limped toward the tunnel, looking defeated, Shedeur Sanders didn't just stand on the sidelines watching. He stayed calm, helmet secured, expression unreadable, observing every detail, every mistake. The temperature in that locker room wasn't just hot, it was charged, and everyone who had been through decades of professional football could sense that something monumental was about to happen. And then it did. In a moment described by multiple insiders as both shocking and inevitable, Sanders stepped forward, not yelling, not gesturing wildly, not giving in to rookie emotion, but delivering a line that would reverberate far beyond that locker room. "Bro, the process is broken. You can't lead a team when you can't even lead yourself." The room went silent. Veterans nodded subtly, defensive players held their ground but silently agreed, and even the coaching staff reportedly felt the weight of what had just been said. This wasn't a temper tantrum or a spontaneous eruption of frustration. This was a calculated assertion of leadership, a message delivered with precision, power, and poise that immediately redefined the hierarchy in Cleveland's quarterback room. For fans who have been following the Browns' ongoing quarterback struggles, this was more than drama. It was the story that had been building for weeks, months, and even years. The moments after the Steelers' loss didn't just reveal a locker room in disarray. They exposed the cracks in leadership, the tension between players and coaches, and the emergence of a quarterback whose presence and confidence could no longer be ignored. Social media erupted within minutes. Fans compared statistics, debated leadership, and watched as the narrative shifted almost instantly. By the time the team bus left the stadium, the conversation had moved from post-game disappointment to full-blown speculation. Was this the moment Shedeur Sanders took over, not just as a potential future star, but as the undeniable alpha of the Cleveland Browns? Sunday night's events weren't just about football. They were about power, control, and the shifting dynamics inside a franchise that had been struggling to find its identity for years. And the implications, they extend far beyond one game, one quarterback, or even one season. For anyone craving the real story, the unfiltered, behind-the-scenes drama that coaches never show on camera, this was the moment Cleveland changed forever. Sunday night's matchup against the Steelers didn't start like an apocalypse, but by the second quarter, it was clear that Cleveland's offense was unraveling. Dillon Gabriel, the team's third-round starter, was struggling from the opening drive. Miscommunications, missed reads, and timing errors turned what should have been routine plays into disasters. By halftime, the scoreboard reflected the chaos: multiple turnovers, zero rhythm, and mounting frustration across the entire team. Offensive linemen were out of sync, receivers were double-checked and confused, and Gabriel's confidence, something every quarterback relies on, was visibly cracking. The most glaring moments weren't just the mistakes, they were the patterns. 3 interceptions, botched protection calls, and indecision before every snap created an atmosphere that insiders described as spectacularly embarrassing. This wasn't a rookie having a rough night. This was an experienced starter unable to hold the team together, making the Browns look like a franchise in freefall on national television. Cameras caught Sanders standing on the sideline, helmet secured, posture rigid, watching every play with intense focus. There was no panic in him, no overreaction, but the silence in his stance spoke volumes. Veterans on the field reportedly felt a shift, a tension so palpable it could be cut with a knife. What made the situation even more volatile was the contrast between Gabriel and Sanders. Gabriel attempted to rally the offense mid-game, shouting motivational phrases and urging his teammates to trust the process. But the words lacked impact. There was no authority, no resonance. The process he referenced was failing in real time, and everyone in the stadium could see it. Meanwhile, Sanders observed not just the plays but the psychology of the locker room. Every misstep by Gabriel, every turnover, wasn't just a failed pass. It was a subtle confirmation of something brewing under the surface. By the fourth quarter, the outcome of the game was almost secondary to what was unfolding emotionally and socially on the field. The Browns' offense was in full collapse. Players were visibly frustrated, communication was broken, and the energy had shifted from competition to survival mode. Even teammates tried to offer encouragement, but it rang hollow against the backdrop of repeated errors. The statistics alone told a story of disaster. 3 turnovers, less than 55% completion rate, and an offense averaging barely over a touchdown per quarter. Yet in the midst of this chaos, Sanders' presence was magnetic, not because he was flamboyant or loud, but because he exuded control. He wasn't a participant in the disaster, but he wasn't a passive observer either. He represented the alternative: competence, precision, and calm under pressure. Players noticed, coaches noticed, and insiders watching closely knew this was the prelude to a dramatic confrontation. Something had shifted on the field that night. Gabriel's command was slipping, while Sanders' influence, quiet but undeniable, was beginning to emerge. By the time the final whistle blew, the Browns weren't just losing a game, they were facing a complete collapse in leadership. This game wasn't just catastrophic on the scoreboard, it was catastrophic for the quarterback hierarchy, exposing weaknesses in strategy, confidence, and control. And in that moment, it became painfully clear that the locker room drama that followed wasn't going to be a simple post-game argument. It was the start of a seismic shift in Cleveland football. As soon as the final whistle blew and the players trudged off the field, the drama was far from over. Inside the Browns' locker room, the atmosphere was electric, tense, heavy, and charged with unspoken frustration. Dillon Gabriel, still rattled from another disastrous performance, attempted the usual routine. He delivered familiar platitudes about staying together, trusting the process, and learning from mistakes. On any normal night, that kind of speech might have calmed teammates, or at least served as a temporary bandage over a rough performance. But this was far from normal. Shedeur Sanders, who had watched Gabriel's collapse play out week after week, finally reached his breaking point. He didn't yell. He didn't stomp around or throw a helmet. He didn't try to embarrass his teammate. Instead, he stepped forward with a controlled, deliberate presence that instantly commanded attention. With every eye in the locker room fixed on him, Sanders delivered a line that would reverberate far beyond the room. "Bro, the process is broken. You can't lead a team when you can't even lead yourself." The words landed like a physical blow. Silence swept over the room. Veterans, some with decades of professional football experience, reportedly admitted they had never witnessed such a commanding presence from a rookie quarterback. Defensive players, usually guarded and neutral, nodded subtly, acknowledging the truth in his statement without a word. One offensive lineman described it as less of a confrontation and more of a revelation, a moment where leadership wasn't claimed through seniority or experience, but through authenticity and undeniable skill. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst fueled by frustration or ego. Sources say Sanders had remained patient for weeks, enduring opening week mistakes, mid-season collapses, and public scrutiny, observing quietly while others floundered. Sunday night, however, marked a turning point. The weight of watching the organization's competitive window erode had built to a critical mass. His statement wasn't personal. It was professional, calculated, and strategic, a clear assertion that the locker room's hierarchy needed to reflect reality.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
The impact was immediate. Teammates' attitudes shifted subtly but significantly. The veterans recognized the authenticity in Sanders' words and the confidence behind them. For many younger players, the quiet assertion of authority served as a model of composure and clarity under pressure. In that moment, the Browns' locker room wasn't just a place for post-game debriefing. It became a stage for an unspoken transfer of power. For Gabriel, the blow was crushing. His attempts at leadership suddenly appeared hollow. His authority eroded not through external criticism, but through Sanders' undeniable display of poise and command. The entire dynamic of the team shifted in an instant. What had been a typical quarterback hierarchy was now in question. Sanders didn't just challenge Gabriel. He reframed the conversation entirely, establishing himself as a figure capable of leading the team both on and off the field. By the time reporters would later reach the locker room, the story of what had happened had already begun to leak. Social media buzzed, fans speculated, and analysts began dissecting every word Sanders had spoken. This confrontation wasn't just a private moment. It was a defining event signaling that a new force was rising within the Cleveland Browns, and nothing would ever be the same. Sunday night didn't just reveal cracks in Cleveland's quarterback room. It exposed an entire organization at a tipping point. By the time Shedeur Sanders confronted Dillon Gabriel, the locker room had already absorbed weeks of compounding frustration. Gabriel's repeated failures, miscommunications, and public struggles weren't isolated incidents. They had built a quiet storm. Sources inside the team describe Sanders' confrontation as the breaking point, the moment when observation turned into action and patience transformed into decisive leadership. What followed wasn't chaos in the conventional sense, but a rapid-fire cascade of consequences. Within minutes, players began communicating privately with agents, family members, and the media. Whispers became texts, texts became screenshots, and by the time the team bus departed Heinz Field's parking lot, social media was exploding. Fans dissected the events, comparing Gabriel's 9 turnovers over 4 games to Sanders' flawless preseason performance. The rookie's statistics were jaw-dropping: perfect completion rates, 0 interceptions, and touchdown drives executed with precision. Overnight, Shedeur Sanders was trending nationally, and the conversation had shifted from mere speculation to a nearly unanimous public acknowledgement that something had changed in Cleveland. The fallout wasn't limited to online chatter. Within the locker room, veterans began quietly signaling their allegiance to Sanders. One offensive lineman posted a cryptic Instagram story showing Sanders lacing his cleats with the caption, "Leaders lead differently." Defensive starters subtly liked posts criticizing Gabriel before quickly unliking them, tiny gestures, but enough to send a message that the team's internal dynamics were shifting. The atmosphere inside the organization became a pressure cooker. Every practice rep, every meeting, and every coaching decision was scrutinized under a microscope. Ownership, too, felt the urgency. Jimmy Haslam reportedly convened an emergency late-night meeting with head coach Stefanski and GM Andrew Barry. Frustration had reached a boiling point. Sources claim Haslam questioned why Sanders remained benched despite Gabriel's continued failures, pressing the staff for concrete explanations and demanding accountability. This wasn't just about a single player. It was about the organization's competitive integrity, its hierarchy, and its ability to field a winning team. The Steelers' game had exposed more than a quarterback problem. It revealed structural cracks in leadership and decision-making processes throughout the Browns' front office and coaching staff. Amid all of this, Sanders' influence continued to grow. Veterans reportedly approached him privately, acknowledging the uncomfortable truth: the locker room had shifted. Gabriel's authority, once unquestioned, had been fundamentally undermined. Sanders didn't just challenge a teammate, he reshaped the team's internal culture in a single night. Coaches and staff were left navigating an unprecedented scenario, trying to maintain order while a rookie quarterback quietly became the central figure of a brewing organizational revolution. The immediate fallout from that Sunday night extended far beyond one game or one locker room. The Browns were now facing a reckoning, a moment when patience had run out, transparency became impossible to avoid, and social media amplified every micro-moment into a national story. For anyone following Cleveland's quarterback drama, the events of that night weren't just about leadership or stats. They were about the beginning of a seismic shift in power. And the story was only getting started. The moment Shedeur Sanders made his locker room statement, the ripple effects were immediate, both inside and outside the team. Within minutes, players were sending messages, subtle signals of allegiance, and hints that the quarterback room hierarchy had shifted dramatically. One veteran offensive lineman posted a cryptic Instagram story showing Sanders lacing his cleats with the caption, "Leaders lead differently." Defensive teammates silently approved, liking or briefly interacting with posts that criticized Gabriel's performance. Small gestures, yes, but they were enough to signal a fundamental change in locker room loyalty. Social media erupted almost instantly. Screenshots circulated of Sanders' preseason stats: 0 interceptions, perfect passer rating, commanding drives against starting defenses. Comparisons to Gabriel's disastrous 4-game stretch: 9 turnovers, a completion percentage barely over 50%, and an offense averaging just over 12 points per game, dominated fan discussions. Within 30 minutes, Sanders was trending nationally. Viral posts claimed, "This isn't a quarterback battle anymore, it's a cover-up protecting poor decisions," while others praised the rookie's composure and leadership. Overnight, the Browns' fan base, long weary of quarterback mismanagement, found a unifying voice demanding accountability and change. The coaching staff and front office were suddenly under unprecedented scrutiny. Head coach Stefanski delivered the usual trust the process comments during the post-game press conference, but the words fell flat. Sources suggest ownership, led by Jimmy Haslam, convened an emergency late-night meeting to evaluate why Sanders remained benched despite Gabriel's ongoing struggles. The frustration at the top was palpable. It wasn't just about wins and losses anymore. It was about credibility, accountability, and the realization that the team's hierarchy no longer reflected the on-field reality. Inside the locker room, the mood had shifted overnight. Sanders' quiet authority inspired respect, confidence, and even subtle defiance toward coaching decisions. Players reportedly approached him privately to voice support, acknowledging an uncomfortable truth. Gabriel's leadership had been undermined, and Sanders was now the focal point. Each practice, each drill, each play was analyzed not only for performance, but for alignment with the emerging power structure. Every pass Sanders threw, every decision he made, was now magnified, his rise accelerating as Gabriel's influence waned. Fans and media amplified the drama at an unprecedented speed. Analysts dissected locker room dynamics, statistical trends, and individual plays, creating a feedback loop where social media chatter and team decisions fed into each other. Tweets, Instagram stories, and viral clips flooded timelines, cementing Sanders' emerging status as more than a backup. He was now a symbol of leadership, composure, and potential franchise transformation. The situation wasn't just a story. It was a spectacle, unfolding in real time, with every moment scrutinized and debated. By the end of the night, the narrative was clear. Shedeur Sanders had shifted from observer to central figure, quietly but undeniably taking command. The Browns weren't just losing faith in their starter. They were witnessing the emergence of a new leader, one whose authority, skill, and composure threatened to redefine the team's direction. And as the social media storm raged, it became obvious that the fallout from this one confrontation would extend far beyond a single game, influencing coaching decisions, player relationships, and the very identity of Cleveland football. To understand why Shedeur Sanders' locker room confrontation carried such weight, it helps to examine the stark contrast between his performance and Dillon Gabriel's, and more importantly, their personalities. On paper, Gabriel's track record should have commanded respect. A 4-year collegiate starter, he followed the traditional development path, expected a structured opportunity, and was supposed to grow gradually into a leadership role. Instead, his early struggles in the NFL exposed vulnerabilities that stats alone can't measure: hesitation, poor decision-making, and the erosion of confidence. Gabriel's 4-game stretch tells a story of missed opportunities: 9 turnovers, a 54% completion rate, and an offense averaging barely 12.5 points per game. Those numbers, while damning, only scratch the surface. Contrast that with Sanders' preseason performance, which has been nothing short of remarkable. Across 87 pass attempts, he threw 0 interceptions, consistently orchestrated touchdown drives, and displayed a poise that separated him from the typical rookie trajectory. But it isn't just statistics that set him apart, it's the way he carries himself. Sanders embodies confidence born from lifelong exposure to elite football, his father's legacy, and a relentless immersion in the sport. He steps onto the field with a composure that suggests leadership is innate rather than assigned, and that natural presence translates into influence both on and off the field. Personality plays a crucial role in quarterback dynamics. Gabriel, for all his experience, relies on structure, coaching support, and incremental progress. When things go wrong, his confidence falters and leadership becomes performative rather than authentic. Sanders, on the other hand, thrives in pressure, commanding attention with subtle yet absolute authority. Sources describe his presence in the locker room as magnetic. He doesn't need to raise his voice to establish hierarchy. Every gesture, every word, every glance reinforces that he is not only capable of playing at a high level, but also of guiding the team through adversity. This combination of performance and personality is what made Sunday night's confrontation so seismic. Gabriel's repeated failures weren't just a setback, they were a symptom of a deeper problem: the inability to inspire trust and confidence. Sanders' intervention wasn't an emotional outburst, it was a calculated display of leadership, a statement that skill alone isn't enough. Credibility comes from composure, decisiveness, and presence. The locker room recognized it immediately. Veterans nodded, younger players absorbed it, and the message was clear. Sanders' influence was no longer optional, it was becoming central. Looking at the bigger picture, this isn't just about numbers or stats. It's about how two quarterbacks approach the game, handle adversity, and earn the respect of those around them. Gabriel's traditional, structured approach has limits, especially when failures compound. Sanders' blend of performance excellence and natural leadership creates a magnetic pull that shifts locker room dynamics in real time. By stepping up when it mattered most, he not only exposed the cracks in Gabriel's leadership, but also positioned himself as a transformative presence, the quarterback capable of redefining Cleveland's future. By Monday morning, the Cleveland Browns locker room was unrecognizable. What had begun as a single, decisive statement by Shedeur Sanders had evolved into a full-scale shift in team dynamics. Veterans, quietly observing the contrast between Sanders' calm authority and Dillon Gabriel's faltering leadership, began to realign their loyalties. The subtle gestures from social media, the Instagram stories, the likes and unlikes, the cryptic posts, weren't just online chatter. They were outward expressions of a seismic internal shift. The locker room was beginning to recognize Sanders as the alpha, the figure around whom trust, confidence, and future success could coalesce. Gabriel's position, once unchallenged, was suddenly precarious. He had been given every opportunity to demonstrate leadership, yet repeated failures, indecision, and hesitancy had eroded the confidence of teammates and coaching staff alike. Each practice, each meeting, and every off-field interaction now carried an unspoken question: who actually commands this team? Sanders' rise wasn't fueled by ego or theatrics. It was the natural outcome of consistent performance, psychological composure, and an authentic ability to inspire belief in those around him. Inside the locker room, the narrative had changed. Leadership was no longer assumed based on tenure or draft position. It was earned and undeniable. The implications extended far beyond Cleveland. Coaches, analysts, and even other organizations began to take notice of how quickly power dynamics could shift when a rookie quarterback combined talent, discipline, and presence. Leadership in football is often about more than X's and O's. It's about influence, perception, and the ability to unite or divide a team. Sanders' actions forced everyone to reconsider traditional hierarchies and the ways teams handle quarterback development. Player empowerment, once subtle and internal, was now at the forefront. raising questions about how much authority a coach truly has when a player demonstrates clear superiority. For Stefanski, the head coach, the scenario was a nightmare wrapped in opportunity. Defend Gabriel and risk the quiet rebellion of a locker room losing faith, or embrace Sanders' authority and face the perception of yielding to a rookie. Every decision, every comment, every practice rotation was scrutinized under the microscope of both media and internal evaluation. Reports suggest the coaching staff began adjusting practice reps almost immediately, increasing Sanders' first-team repetitions while scrutinizing Gabriel's performance with unprecedented intensity. The balance of power was no longer theoretical. It was measurable, observable, and unavoidable. Ownership, too, was drawn into the story. Jimmy Haslam's draft night gamble selecting Sanders suddenly looked prophetic. The rookie's ability to assert authority, perform flawlessly, and shift the locker room dynamic validated decisions that had been questioned at the time. The Steelers' game, once a loss to forget, now became a turning point in Cleveland's organizational narrative. What had started as a confrontation in the locker room evolved into a full reckoning. A reevaluation of coaching credibility, player leadership structures, and even franchise identity. By the time the team returned to practice, the power shift was complete. Sanders wasn't simply competing for a starting job. He was shaping the organization's future, forcing everyone around him to respond, adapt, or risk irrelevance. The Browns' locker room was no longer a neutral space. It had become a proving ground, with one rookie quarterback at the center, challenging everything the team thought it knew about leadership, hierarchy, and competitive success. By the time the dust settled, one thing was clear. Shedeur Sanders had reshaped the Cleveland Browns in a single night. What began as a post-game confrontation transformed into an undeniable assertion of leadership, one that challenged not only Dillon Gabriel's authority, but the very structure of the organization. Sanders didn't just prove he could play. He demonstrated that leadership is earned through presence, performance, and authenticity. His actions forced teammates, coaches, and ownership alike to confront a reality they could no longer ignore. The Browns' quarterback hierarchy, and perhaps their future, was changing before their eyes. For Dillon Gabriel, the consequences were immediate and unmistakable. His authority, once secure, had been fundamentally undermined. Repeated failures on the field were no longer just statistics. They became evidence that he couldn't command trust or inspire confidence in a team desperate for direction. Gabriel's role in Cleveland shifted from undisputed starter to a quarterback whose tenure and influence were now under serious question. Even the coaching staff had to reassess the narrative they had been promoting. Patience, process, and gradual development were no longer sufficient explanations for continued shortcomings. Meanwhile, Sanders' rise wasn't merely about replacing a starter. It was about redefining the team's culture. Veterans privately recognized his authenticity and composure, and younger players saw in him a model of how leadership can be wielded quietly yet decisively. Social media amplified every moment, creating a feedback loop that reinforced his influence both inside and outside the locker room. By acting with restraint, focus, and precision, Sanders signaled that authority isn't about yelling louder or making spectacle. It's about delivering truth in a way that resonates with everyone around you. The broader implications for the Browns are profound. The quarterback controversy wasn't just a personal rivalry. It became a microcosm of organizational accountability, leadership hierarchy, and player empowerment. Every practice, every meeting, every public statement was now scrutinized, revealing how fragile coaching credibility can be when confronted by undeniable talent and influence. The situation also serves as a case study for the league. Talent alone isn't enough. Leadership, composure, and the ability to inspire belief are equally critical in defining the trajectory of a franchise. For fans, the takeaway is equally dramatic. This wasn't simply another game lost or another quarterback struggle. Sunday night revealed the emergence of a true franchise leader, someone capable of seizing control in high-pressure moments, redefining expectations, and reshaping the future of Cleveland football. Sanders, actions demonstrated that influence is earned through consistency, authenticity, and courage, and that a single decisive moment can alter perceptions and change the course of an entire organization. Ultimately, the Browns' situation serves as both warning and inspiration. Leadership isn't inherited, it's asserted. Authority isn't given, it's earned. And when the moment demands action, the right person doesn't wait. They step forward, reshape the narrative, and redefine the future. Shedeur Sanders didn't just confront a struggling teammate, he confronted the Browns themselves, and in doing so, declared that the era of uncertainty in Cleveland football might finally be over. Sunday night wasn't just a game, it was a reckoning, and the story of what comes next is only beginning. The story of Sunday night in Cleveland isn't just a tale of a game lost or a quarterback struggling. It's a story about power, leadership, and the subtle dynamics that shape an entire organization. Shedeur Sanders didn't simply outperform Dillon Gabriel. He redefined what it means to lead a team, to earn respect, and to assert authority in a room full of seasoned professionals. His calm, precise confrontation didn't just expose weaknesses. It forced a reevaluation of the Browns' hierarchy, the credibility of the coaching staff, and the very identity of the franchise. By the time the locker room cleared, the message was undeniable. Sanders wasn't just a backup quarterback with potential. He was the new focal point of Cleveland football. Gabriel's journey, once thought to be secure, became a cautionary tale in leadership and resilience. Performance alone wasn't enough to maintain authority, and repeated missteps under pressure highlighted the fragility of assumed command. His attempts to rally the team with platitudes and trust the process, mantras fell flat, overshadowed by Sanders' quiet but absolute confidence. The contrast between the two quarterbacks wasn't just about statistics. It was about presence, credibility, and the ability to inspire belief in those around you. Gabriel's story serves as a reminder that in professional sports, and in any high-stakes environment, authority must be continuously earned, and trust can evaporate in an instant. Meanwhile, Sanders' rise illustrated a rare combination of talent, composure, and leadership. Every decision, every glance, every measured word conveyed that he belonged, not just as a future prospect, but as a present influence capable of guiding the team through adversity. His ability to assert himself without theatrics or ego, while maintaining performance under scrutiny, set him apart from not only Gabriel but many players in the league. The ripple effect extended beyond the locker room. Fans, analysts, and even the front office recognized that Cleveland's trajectory had shifted in real time. What had started as a routine game loss became the catalyst for an organizational transformation. The broader lessons from this scenario are compelling. Leadership isn't about position, draft order, or even years of experience. It's about authenticity, decisiveness, and the courage to act when circumstances demand it. Power dynamics within any organization, sports, business, or otherwise, are fragile, and influence can shift rapidly when someone steps forward with clarity and conviction. Sanders' actions demonstrated how a single moment, executed with precision and purpose, can redefine expectations, reshape culture, and accelerate change. For the Cleveland Browns, the story is far from over. Questions remain about Gabriel's role, the coaching staff's decisions, and how the franchise will navigate this new hierarchy. But one fact is clear. Sanders has established himself as the quarterback around whom the team's future revolves. Sunday night wasn't just another game. It was a reckoning, a lesson in leadership, and a signal that in Cleveland, a new era may be quietly, decisively beginning. The implications extend far beyond football. They remind us all that influence is earned, courage is noticed, and when the moment calls, stepping forward can change everything.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.